Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this world. We have greetings for all of you. We just finished the first session, the opening ceremony of Women in STEM. Now, I am very happy to say that this is the first regional session, and I have the pleasure of just giving you some housekeeping thoughts before I give it to Minako Kumamoto. First of all, welcome to the regional session. It's on Asia and Pacific, and this whole day conference, international conference in virtual mode, of course, of women in STEM in the time of pandemic. The conference is hosted by UNITAR in association with IFES and GDC. I'm Soma Chakrabarti. I'm the first vice president of IFES, and I work for ANSYS, the global leader in engineering simulation. I will be your moderator for this session, and in fact, the moderator for all the sessions today. Now, here are a few housekeeping stuff. First of all, please submit your questions in the question and answer box so that at the end we have some time dedicated to question and answers, and we can answer, the panelists can answer. This session is the first regional session, but the second in the conference, and each session has the same link. It is exactly the same link what you have used for the opening or this one. It will be the same link that you will be using and listening to or watching it. So keep that link handy. In between two sessions, we are always having a small break to get some water or eat some food. And now I will give it to Ms. Minako Kumamoto. She is the Director of Division for Prosperity at UNITAR. She is passionate about creating an inclusive, sustainable future, especially for women. She's a visiting lecturer at Hiroshima University. She has over 18 years of professional experience in the development cooperation field, and she has been with United Nations for 12 years, over 12 years, in fact. So, Minako, may I get some thoughts from you about this specific session on Asia and Pacific?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Soma, and warm greetings from United Nations Institute for Training and Research, and good evening from Japan, where I am located. And once again, it is a great pleasure to be able to celebrate this very special day, International Women's Day, in cooperation with colleagues from IFES and GEDC. So thank you so much. And welcome to our first panel, regional panel discussion today, and welcome everyone. This session is devoted to highlighting the experiences of women working in STEM in the Asia and Pacific region. A recent study published by UNESCO Bangkok estimates that only 23.4% of jobs in STEM in East Asia and the Pacific are performed by women, which is very low. The same study pinpoints the need for education institutions to encourage more girls to study STEM, as well as the need to enhance the retention of women working in the STEM industries. And actually this topic we briefly covered in the opening session, but it'll be wonderful to be able to hear more in this regional session. Our aim for today's discussion in this regional session is to explore how women in these jobs are coping with the ongoing pandemic COVID-19, with an emphasis on highlighting strategies for building resilience. I am very much looking forward to hearing from our distinguished speakers today. And on behalf of our partners, UNITA, IFES, and GEDC, thank you so much once again for coming to this conference. Thank you so much, Soma. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Minako. And now, as Mihako said, we have a set of panelists, distinguished women and a distinguished man, because we need to know from both sides of the aisle, I would say, that how women in STEM in the time of pandemic in Asia Pacific region, what is happening, what can we do? So let me first, what I'll do is that let me tell you whom we have as panelists, and then when each panelist is there, I will give a brief introduction. We have Minako Imamura, we have Marlene Kanga, we have Sushma Kulkarni, we have Khairiyah Mohd-Yusof, and we have our Mani K. Manivannan. So let me first introduce Minako. Minako, you completed medical schooling at Kyushu University, Japan, and Minako started her career as a physician. She's a doctor. Through her experiences as a clinician, she became interested in molecular biology and human genetics. She's currently working for genetic research at the University of Ryukyus, as well as laboratory medicine at University of the Ryukyus Hospital, Okinawa. Her current research interest focuses on genetic basis of type 2 diabetes or other lifestyle diseases and its clinical translation. What a wonderful person to say what women had faced during the pandemic, especially the women in STEM. Minako, would you please say a few words?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for warm introduction. And hello everyone. It's good to see you all. My name is Minako Imamura, and I am an associate professor of medicine, University of the Ryukyus, Okinawa, Japan. It's a great honor for me to participate women in STEM in the time of the pandemic as a panelist. And also, I am so excited about sharing our experiences on the pandemic with leaders from diverse backgrounds. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself briefly. Actually, the Soma introduced me already, but okay, as she said, I finished medical school in 1995, and I started my career as a physician. And because I thought the basic research increased our understandings of human diseases and contributed to the development of new treatments. That's why I became interested in basic medical research, such as molecular biology or human genetics. And so I'm currently working for basic research in the field of human genetics at the University of the Ryukyus. So my current research interest is the genetic basis of type 2 diabetes, and my research goal is translation of genetic findings to clinical practice, such as development of novel treatments or prevention measures for type 2 diabetes. And so next, I would like to talk about my COVID-19 pandemic experience. In Japan, more than 400,000 of COVID-19 cases have been confirmed so far, which is corresponding to 0.3% of entire Japanese population. And Okinawa, where I live in, is one of endemic area in Japan, and our university hospital accepts COVID-19 patients. And actually, I have not seen the COVID-19 patients as a physician because basically my job in the university is basic medical research and laboratory medicine. And it is fortunate that I and my family members have not been infected with coronavirus. And I have not lost any of my friends or colleagues due to COVID-19. But the pandemic has changed my daily life in some way. The biggest change for me is that long distance travel has been restricted throughout this year. Even though I don't see COVID-19 patients in the hospital, I have to follow the activity restriction policy for medical workers issued by university hospitals, which is actually stricter than that for non-medical basic researchers. And so I had to cancel most of my business trips in this year. And also I could hardly see my parents who live far away. So I'm hoping that the COVID-19 pandemic will settle down soon and our life is going back to normal. So that's all about me, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. It is the first-hand learning, I would say, learning from someone who is in the STEM workforce, I would say, as well as a woman and going through certain difficulties. But I would love to listen from others. We'll have questions for you when we start having questions, but let me introduce Dr. Marlene Kanga. You are a friend, a colleague, and I also consider you as one of my mentors. So I'm just thrilled to introduce you. Dr. Marlene Kanga is the immediate past president of World Federation of Engineering Organizations, or WFEO, the peak body for engineering institution internationally representing some 100 engineering institutions and approximately 30 million engineers. She's a chemical engineer. She was the 2013 National President of Engineers Australia. She's a fellow of the Academy of Technology, Science and Engineering Australia. She's a member of the Order of Australia, a national honor in recognition of her leadership of the engineering profession. Marlene, tell us about what you think, especially related to women in STEM and during this pandemic, how they showed the resilience and what you see in the Asia Pacific region, and especially with respect to Australia. What have you seen?
Yes, thank you very much, Soma, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the world, and especially in the Asia Pacific. It's a real pleasure to be here, and happy International Women's Day. It's almost the end of the day for me. It's nearing midnight, but it's been a very special day. I'm going to talk a little bit first about the experience of women scientists and engineers in the Asia Pacific, and then specifically on Australia. So looking at the Global Gender Index report from the World Economic Forum, they say that Asia and the Asia Pacific significantly is behind the rest of the world in that it will take 71 years for South Asia to reach gender parity and 143 years for East Asia to reach gender parity. And in particular for Australia, the Global Gender Gap Index, we've been dropping since I started looking at the index about 5 years ago. We've dropped from around 27 to global rank of 43. So this is not a good sign. And in fact, women tend to go to school and university in large numbers, but it's in the profession, in the workforce, that women do not fare so well and leave. And more on that later. I want to talk specifically about Asia and the Asia Pacific Nation Network of the International Network of Women Engineers and Scientists. I was privileged to host the inaugural meeting that established this network in Adelaide, Australia in 2011. I volunteered myself to do this without knowing what it involved. And we managed, with the support of UNESCO and some corporate sponsors, to bring some 35 women from around Asia on travel awards. And we had over 100 women there, leaders, women leaders. And we established the network. But more importantly, some of the women there went back to their countries and established national networks, and 8 national networks were established and continue to thrive, including in Malaysia, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Mongolia, and so on, and Sri Lanka. There are now 16 members of this network. And not only do we provide mutual mentoring and support, we meet annually on the smell of an oily rag without much funding, but we also progress research into women in STEM. The Korean Women and Scientists and Engineers Association have been running a study on women in STEM between 2015 and 2019. And here are some of the reasons for the gender gap in STEM from their research, which covers all of Asia. There's some cultural factors. Boys are encouraged more than girls, and I know this was raised in the first session. Once women graduate, it's very difficult for them to get a job. Becoming a tenured professor is more difficult. Women receive less pay. Women experience discrimination and sexual harassment. Work-life balance is an issue because women continue to do more of the household duties and child caring. And there are many gender stereotypes which work against women, such as women are born to take care of children, men are more rational, the husband should have greater power to maintain peace in the family. And in fact, men see the same issues, see the same gender barriers as women, but things don't change because of those cultural norms. So we really need strong leadership in Asia to move the dial, if you like. And the pandemic has in fact exacerbated, made the situation much worse. And women in STEM in their tenuous position are in fact leaving or falling behind. When the pandemic first struck Australia and we had lockdowns, the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering did some what they called rapid research to inform the government on what was happening so that the government could take action, say with stimulus packages and so on, to support women in STEM. And here are some of the findings of that report, which was in fact published in May 2020, so quite early in the lockdown. We had been in lockdown for about 3 months, from March and April, so 2 months when they did this survey. But very early on, it showed that women continue to be a minority in STEM professions, were carrying a disproportionate load of domestic work, and had reduced career opportunities. The pandemic resulted in disruption to working hours, job security, and paid work. And this was most acute for women with children under 12. A high proportion of women, especially in the university sector, were on short-term contract and casual jobs. And these are the women who lost their jobs first. Only 12% of women in universities are in academic or professorial levels. This highlights the barriers to promotion pre-pandemic, and it's even worse during the pandemic. Pre-COVID, women were underrepresented in receiving research grants. Only 24% of research grants were given to women, and only 26% of those grants were led by women investigators. Only 28% of applications in the medical field were led by women. And it was in these fields that large numbers of jobs, more than 700,000, were lost just between February and April 2020 by women in the STEM field due to COVID. women lost 50% more jobs compared to men. And those were losses because of their higher casualized workforce. Women of color and from other diverse backgrounds face even greater barriers, as we see in other countries as well. And so they also lost jobs in higher proportions in the STEM workforce. And the study concluded that the hard-won gains by women in STEM are at risk. This was in May 2020. And today, McKinsey published a report which, based on global research, which said the same thing, of the losses of women as a result of COVID. Across the entire Australian workforce, total paid hours declined from 35 to 31 hours per week, but women's working hours declined faster and further compared to men. And then also women were doing more unpaid work, especially around the household, looking after children, homeschooling, and looking after the sick and elderly. So women suffered high levels of stress managing work and life, and higher levels of anxiety. So well-being declined at a much higher rate for women than for men. So overall, it's not a very good picture, and it seems that we have fallen behind during the time of COVID, and precious gains have been eroded, and we need to do more to bounce back and show that resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Some of the statistics that you were giving, I mean, it just stuns us because they are truth. I mean, these are the real numbers, and these are not good numbers. So I mean, it's stunning and disappointing, especially. I mean, I listened to you and I and others, and I have read them very recent McKinsey report on 550 that what has happened to women in STEM, especially in the IT sector, even the people who are the women who have children below 10 or 12 years old. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I would like to now go to Sushma and a little bit about her. Dr. Sushma Kulkarni is the director at Raja Rambapu Institute of Technology, Maharashtra, India. She received her PhD in civil engineering from Shivaji University, Kolhapur, India, and has 32 years of teaching experience in civil engineering programs. And her areas of interest are concrete technology, TQM, total quality management, I would say quality circles, constructions management, watershed management, and women's empowerment. And she has, I mean, she has such an impressive bio. It will take a long time to describe it. And I have seen her getting award at the GEDC last year. And you have traveled around the world. What I would like to know, what are your thoughts, especially with the context of India, about the women in STEM who are fighting either to keep the jobs or at the same time taking care of their, the people at home, or what is happening in India, where, what I see surprisingly, the women in STEM, the numbers have increased from my time, which was more than 30 years ago.
Yes, thank you, Soma madam. So good evening and good afternoon to all the participants, and wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. And I must really appreciate the efforts taken by IFES to organize such a conference for women in STEM in time of COVID. So COVID for India was also no different, though it started in mid-March, but because of our Prime Minister's vision, it did not spread much initially. Initially, first 2-3 months when the lockdown was there, March, April, May end, the numbers were quite less, just in thousands. But when the lockdown was lifted up, the numbers started moving a little bit up. As on today, it is around 11.2 million. And out of that, the recovery rate was also good. It was around 94-95%. So people actually showed a lot of self-discipline. Looking at the population of India, a lot of self-discipline was shown, and I think it's the 50% plus women population who could bring in their families that discipline, that restraint, the control, because everyday thing was difficult during lockdown. All of us have faced getting the vegetables, getting everything else at home, you know, for cooking and feeding the family. So in times of lockdown, it was a tough job. But what I see around myself, the families could manage, especially talking of the STEM or the women who are working around, at least in the institutes nearby, or I would like to share a project which I started during this period of pandemic about the GDC book on rising to the top. So the third edition with reference to Indian women leaders. So that was given to me by Professor Hans. And when I initiated this project and I started talking to the women during the pandemic period, so all those women who were in leadership role, they were so optimistic, very positive, and they accepted. And when I asked them, is this pandemic affecting you? So they were all saying, no, we are busier than ever. So as all of us have discussed, that being women in India, at least culturally, taking care of home, family is the first priority generally. So despite that, I could see women were very enthusiastic, and I could identify around 36 women leaders, maybe through LinkedIn, through my network of friends, through various associations I'm associated with. And all these women have not talked to me negatively about the impact of COVID or losing jobs, or how they are treating women in their organization. So they were all protective. And though the salaries were reduced, of course, during the COVID period, that was one impact which all of us faced, was reduction in salary. But then the care was taken that enough salary is given so that the household things can run. No one suffers, no one goes hungry, you know, those sort of things. So I think in all, India managed it quite well, especially women also took it very positively. And I, being a director over here in engineering college, for me it was a radical change, and people were not used to virtual platform, virtual mode of learning. So suddenly within 15 days we took a decision that we can't now stop the teaching learning process. Let us switch to virtual mode of teaching learning. And the training was provided, and to my surprise, all the deans, everyone accepted the challenge. See, when they were not even listening to webinars, they were not at all exposed. Even if there was a webinar, they used to be scared of speaking in the webinar. You know, that was a fear they had. But then drastically within 1 week, everyone got, you know, comfortable with the platform. They learned it, and they started delivering lectures to the students. Of course, women were most hit because they had to take care of no domestic help because of lockdown. So taking care of children, cooking, and managing the lectures online. But I think the challenge was accepted very well. In fact, I will tell later on, one of our faculty did a wonderful thing, but I think I'll share that later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sushma. And I certainly will have a lot of questions for you. And I'm just amazed and feeling quite proud that India managed it well, and especially for the women who are in the STEM field. But I now have none other than my dear friend, Khairiyah Mohd-Yusof from Malaysia. Now, we connect a lot on LinkedIn, and we have been able to meet, I think, once or twice. Khairiyah Mohd-Yusof, she's a professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering and the founding and current director of University Technology Malaysia Center for Engineering Education. She is the president of the Society of Engineering Education Malaysia, was the vice president of International Federation of Engineering Education Societies, that is IFES, from 2014 to 2018, and was board member of Research in Engineering Education Network from 2010 to 2017. I think I remember, I can't remember if I had seen it personally, or I have seen the pictures, but you were the recipient of 2018 Duncan Fraser IFES Global Engineering Education Award. So here is our Khairiyah. I would love to know, in your region, how was the impact? And I think everyone would love to know. And what are your thoughts about, in general, what you have seen in women in STEM, how they endured the pandemic challenges, where they're resilient or where they have to go through a lot of different things?
Hello, Soma. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good evening. Well, it's in the late evening here. But happy International Women's Day. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction, Soma. In Malaysia, it's very much like what has been described. Quite similar to what Sushma has said about India. I think when the challenge comes, it's really surprising to see how everybody really rise up to the occasion. I can see everybody's looking out for everyone on the needs. Of course, COVID-19 affected everyone in terms of our livelihoods, in terms of our movements. We had, well, we were just out of a total, not a total lockdown, but quite a strict lockdown. So we've had that twice or three times. But there's a lot of non-governmental organizations that also sprung into action to look for, really those who are in need, to provide the help that's needed. So there's a lot of goodwill that has been going around. But of course, there are instances where some families were missed. So of course, we've had very heart-wrenching stories. But I think in general, it's nice to see at the ground level that everybody is looking out for everyone. At the same time, for women as an academic in an institution of higher learning, I see a lot of the younger women, like I have 4 children. 2 of my children is already working. Another 2, well, they're studying, but in an institution of higher learning. So of course they have to study online, but they can manage themselves. When I see the younger faculty members struggling to cope with the family, with very young children, they cannot. There's no daycare. There's nobody to support them. So it's well, because I have in the center, I have several very young women also who have like 2-3-year-old children. And in Malaysia, it's common for us to have like 3 or 4 children who are very young at the same time. So you can imagine the efforts in trying to do their work, giving classes online with small children running around. And we have like meetings, we have work to do, we're expected to get the things moving. But I think everybody understood that if during a meeting or doing our work together, if a mother has to leave and attend to her children, we do not mind. If you have the children sitting on the laps, it's okay. So we accepted those things. How else, I have young academics, having to pull out of the research projects that we're working on because, there's a problem with the family. In terms of looking after the children. It's not like, well, in Malaysia, it's quite common to have the husband also supporting the wife. But there's instances where the husband is working in a critical area where he has to go out of the house.
Right.
And the wife is an academic and she can stay at home and work from home. So the responsibility during the day is shifted to the wife. So in the end, we figured out what's the best time to talk to the different kinds of situation that each person is facing. So I will be talking over the phone at night to some of my fellows, and then things change, and then sometimes we have to do it like it's 7 in the morning, so that the children will not wake up yet, and then we can have like 1 hour to discuss properly. So it's the adjustments and the balance that you have to make, yes, to allow for things to happen. So things are still happening, but we have to understand the different situations that everybody's facing. Yeah. So, and also for the students, my heart actually go out to them, because in some places in Malaysia, they don't have good internet connection. So it really affected their learning. And some of them had problems. The data can be quite expensive in Malaysia. So in our classes, some of us actually have a charity box, such that if a student is having difficulty in paying for the data, so we actually tell them, you can just send us a message. We will not ask questions. We'll just give you, there's a maximum allotment for some people, for the students, so that they can go on and attend our classes. Yeah. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Khairiyah. It reminds me of a situation which I had experienced. One of my colleagues, she has, I was talking about her in the previous session, the opening ceremony, that she had a baby a few years ago, and now she just had a baby last week. So quite a few months ago, when the lockdown has just started in the UK, and we have been asked to stay at home and work from there. And her husband was also working from home, and the baby of 2 years old was there, and the baby was put to sleep when she had important conversations, and our husband would take care of them. They were sharing the duties. So one day it happened, her husband had to go outside and to get something or to talk to someone, and the baby was put to sleep, and then the baby woke up while there was an important meeting was going on. The baby came to the mom. Where will the baby go? I mean, she's after all really not even a toddler. And then she tried to ask her mother that, pay attention, or crying or something. What I saw in some men's face during that meeting was a sort of disgust, and that really had hurt me. And said that, why is this baby making sound? And then one of them said, just put yourself on mute. I mean, could that person be saying that, comfort the baby, and then why not you come back? I mean, just a little bit changing this would have shown not only emotional intelligence, but caring for this situation. The daycare, or the nursery as they call here, wasn't open, so the baby couldn't be there. And the mom has to take care of the baby, the work, because she has to earn also money to support the family. And altogether, I mean, I just saw it. And unfortunately, I mean, I was so stunned that I couldn't even say for a few seconds that, well, let's let her take care of the baby first, and then she can come back within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. So what you said, that how people supported that really, and the way, the flexibility of the hours, I love it. Thank you so much. I still don't see money, and probably he's still not there, because I'm keeping track of that, because I wanted to know what Mani says, who is the Associate Director of SRM Institute of Science and Technology in India. I think he has some connectivity issues or so. I don't know, I don't see him. So I have some questions coming in, but let me ask those questions one after another. And here's a question for Marlene. I think I'll have a question. Now, have you identified any benefits of diversity in STEM, and what are the barriers to a better gender balance in technology, especially brought by the pandemic? Is there something you would like to point out?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, Soma. I think the pandemic has forcing everyone to work from home has accelerated the acceptance of flexible working. As Khairiyah said, we were forced by necessity to work through some issues. And not just women, but I've seen men on work meetings, where the dog is barking or the dog comes and sits on your lap. And in fact, there was one presentation where a man was giving the presentation, very serious guy and a very serious topic. And his 2-year-old came in and was banging the door and making a big noise behind him. And he was so stiff, like he tried to ignore this 2-year-old. And the more he ignored, the more, what 2-year-olds are like. And it was very funny, I thought, because he was trying to be so serious. Perhaps a woman might have, picked up the child and, comforted the child and carried on. But the point is that it's not just women, men also are facing these issues. And so suddenly management and leaders have realized that flexibility is possible, and that if it's managed well, the productivity need not suffer. And we are rapidly coming to the norm, a new normal, if you like, in Australia, where everyone will not be returning to 5 days if they don't have to, if they're on desk-based jobs, and perhaps 3 or 4 days a week in the office and 1 day at home, reducing long commute times and just bringing a bit more work-life balance. So this, I think this flexibility will benefit women a lot, especially those with young children. If children are at school, they can stop, they can pick the children up when school finishes and then continue working. So that's a great thing. But there's also some downside. So I think in terms of switching off, it's very hard to switch off, and many men and women work much longer hours, and there's a need to set boundaries, I think, between when work ends and home life begins, especially if you're not in the office. And in fact, you might in fact have longer hours. But I think overall, there's a positive for flexible working that we should embrace and make the most of to support women in STEM.
Thank you so much. We'll see how things turn up when things go back to the new normal. New normal will be, I don't know, but I have a feeling that it's a hybrid kind of working. And we'll learn on the way, and I've stopped thinking about that. But thank you so much for the answer. I have a question for Sushma coming in, and that is, you talked about your workplace, how it has affected. What measures have you personally taken in efforts to overcome the challenges you personally faced? And I don't know if you have personally faced any challenge, but tell us. And have you missed any opportunity in working in STEM during this pandemic, working from home? Have you missed any opportunity?
Yeah. So, as I said, getting the faculty and the students on the virtual platform to continue with the teaching learning was a challenge, because as I said, it was a very new thing for people, though they knew about it, but they had not practiced. So the students also had issues like they didn't have laptops or tablets or those sort of devices where they can get connected. And especially my institute is in rural part of India, where really the students who come to the institute are from farmers' family, and for them it's not easy to buy devices. So what we did, we offered our own desktops to the students.
Okay.
So I had put a notice, those students who are unable to attend because of lack of devices, they can come and get it issued on their names from the institute, and they should continue learning. Some had issues of internet connectivity. So in a limited way, they were given accommodation, or they can come in the college campus, sit and attend the classes. So some such arrangements were made so that those who wish to learn should continue learning. So there were challenges in terms of, again, lack of infrastructure. For that, I think men, women, everyone has the same thing to face. But I think overall, what I liked was my faculty rose up to the occasion to this pandemic, and they learned new things, they delivered in the best possible way, and we could continue with the teaching learning. In fact, the practicals also, what we did, the faculty used to come to the institute, record the practicals, video recording of the practicals was done. It was not just taught in a theory way. So the practicals were recorded and delivered and explained to the students. So to enhance teaching learning. So a lot of innovative practices were introduced, learning tools, So men and women both equally, they have shown this interest. So I cannot differentiate here, but it was taken in a very strong spirit and delivered properly.
Wonderful. Have you personally lost any opportunity during this time because of either lockdown or the changed work from home situation?
So actually, I became grandmother during this pandemic period in June. And so as Khairiyah was saying, even I was attending meeting with my grandson on my lap, because there used to be MOUs and the meetings used to be scheduled. And for scheduled meetings like MOUs and all, so you can't say, okay, I'm busy now. So I used to take my grandson on my lap and keep working. And people understood that difficulty, and things were moving on. But I don't see I missed any opportunity, because online, whatever I could do, attend the GEDC Industry Forum or any other. In fact, I delivered more expert talks because I have to travel. So there was no time lost in traveling. So if every year I deliver 10 to 15 expert talks, so this year I delivered 20 plus talks. And because I could deliver it from home, and I could save the time of traveling, and that was something, that's an opportunity which I could use because of pandemic.
Wonderful, and congratulations of being a grandma, and that's a wonderful thing to happen. And you are one of those luckiest people to hold your grandchild on your lap while working, and people understood. Thank you so much. I'll go to Minako. I have some questions that do you by any chance think that did COVID provide an opportunity for women to learn more about STEM during this lockdown period through online learning, now that a lot more online learning or remote teaching is taking place? Did it give a little more opportunity to women to learn about the STEM fields?
Okay, thank you for your question. So far, many female scientists in Japan, especially who are raising children, have missed the opportunity to attend academic conferences because it has been difficult to them to have a business trip leaving their children. However, during the pandemic, most of the academic conferences in Japan had moved online. So as a result, the female scientists or medical doctors got the chance to participate online conferences and learn more about the latest scientific findings, which we are really happy about that. So I hope we still have the option of remote participation in the future academic meetings, even after pandemic settle down, to provide more opportunities for women to learn more. So this is our experience.
That's really nice to know. One of the things that I think I'll ask Khairiyah about this. Khairiyah, I mean, you talked about how COVID-19 had affected your workplace and what measures you had taken. Could you say that has COVID-19, Khairiyah, it has delayed by any way your STEM-related researcher projects? In a way, how have been your projects? I know you work on lots of different projects. Have they affected your research as such?
That's interesting. Because, well, the initial part, trying to shift online when we don't have platform and the tools, that delayed it. But then once we have managed to shift everything online, then everything was full speed ahead.
Right.
The nice thing is the funding that we get from the government for some of our research projects, they actually give us an extension of 6 months. So we're allowed to shift the deadline for a lot of the deliverables from our research that's funded by the government by 6 months. So they took that into account. But the interesting thing is that because of shifting it online, then the boundary of having to do things within Malaysia is now no longer there. I have a project under Engineering X, which is founded by the Royal Academy of Engineering and Lloyds Foundation from the UK. So we were supposed to go to Indonesia to provide training. But of course, we cannot go to Indonesia. So we shifted everything online. And through the workshops that we are giving to the engineering faculty members there, it seems that, yes, they value the content that we're giving them, but because we emphasize on a very interactive environment, even though it's online, we use a lot of the suitable tools, and they emulated what we did in that interactive workshops into their classrooms. So yeah, I think it's very important for us to realize that what we do is more important than what we say. That will have more of an impact to those who we are trying to help, because they actually, they were very happy to see how an interactive learning environment can still be achieved even when it's online. And the thing is, before this, I have actually always been fortunate that, when you're invited to go to conferences as an invited speaker, or when I give workshops in other parts of the world, my travel has been supported. So I am so fortunate to be able to meet so many wonderful and knowledgeable people like yourself, Soma.
Thank you.
But it was always me seeing the opportunities and the excitement around engineering education and the research projects and a lot of the impact that we can have within engineering education. But because of COVID-19, now that we have all this platform, I can bring the world to the community that I'm trying to develop. So that really got me excited. We have webinars every week. We have people, experts from the US, experts from Australia, experts from the UK, from Europe speaking at our webinars. And it has been really inspiring because these are the names that you would see in the papers.
Yeah.
And yes, so, and we had a conference. Yes, I went crazy and actually held a conference last year with so many invited speakers that everybody was spoiled for choice. They didn't know which session to go to because all
Yeah.
the speakers were good. But I think it's better to be spoiled for choice than not really knowing, than being really bored with, not knowing which session to go to
Yeah.
because you don't like any of them. So I think we managed to lift up everybody's spirits and, to go for it and not really see this as something that is bringing us down. It's just to move forward with what we have. And even with our students' projects in our classes, we always have, when I teach process control, we always have a real world project at the end for
Yeah.
process control design, where we'll bring the students to the plant. They'll
Yeah.
do control system design. But because we cannot go out to the chemical industry now,
Right.
we use our contact and had a virtual visit. So the engineers and the plant managers described the plant. They had a cute question and answer with the plant manager, getting information on to do the final project for the class. And it's the same with our first year students. Like this past semester, I was teaching first year students. I showed them pictures of our university because they've never been to our university. But at the same time, we still have the usual exhibition and competition that we always have for the first year students. And we have almost 300 students taking part. It's a sustainable development based project. It's always so this semester we use consumerism as the theme, and they came out because it's difficult for them to present online. It will take a long time, so we had them make videos. And because we've been asking them to make videos at every milestone of the project, the juries from outside of our university, they were so amazed at the quality of the students' videos and presentations. Yes. So we still have a large scale, I say, why do you want to do things in a smaller manner? This is our opportunity to really do it large scale. And now we're even able to open up the seminars that we always have to our students, to the public, to the community. And we have parents coming in and also being interested about engineering, because this is a seminar for first year students. So I think it's an exciting time. I'm excited
Right.
over the opportunities that we've faced.
One of my colleagues, and I mean, I was listening and I was thinking about this colleague, and he lives in Melbourne, and he says that he is always in favor of online learning and runs an online learning provider company. And he says that said to me that what we couldn't do in 10 years, we have shown the world that we could do in 2 months.
Yep.
All of a sudden, people who were so skeptical about online learning, and so they had to suddenly grasp it. And women who had to do it, women who are in the workforce and had to do it, and at the same time, they were also managing the workload at home, because that has been the norm. But I think I will go to a question, and this is coming from Minako, but I don't know who has asked the question, but I'm going to read it. How are women in the medical field treated differently than males in the similar roles? And have you seen or experienced any discrimination? And if so, did you respond to it, especially during the pandemic? Could you say a
Oh,
few words?
okay. Thank you for the question. So during the pandemic, I haven't seen the discrimination for women doctor, but in other case, actually, the woman who works in the medical area, including nurse or doctors, were had experienced discrimination in terms of the raising their children to the nursery, because nursery doesn't want to take care of the children of medical worker, because they may have more chance to have COVID-19. You know what I mean? So, right, it is not the gender discrimination, but in other, we have experienced the other discrimination. And also in terms of the gender discrimination in our field, it is a little bit difficult to say, but I have experienced in some discrimination when I was really young and in the student. Yeah. But actually, it's getting the discrimination is already nowadays I don't have experienced those discriminations, because I think the Japanese may have changed in somehow.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's a very good point to note, and I do think that it has changed everywhere. I wrote in the Rising to the Top book that many of us have written, the first volume and the second volume, that I had faced when I first went to study engineering and technology. A couple of my male colleagues, our male classmates, came and told me that I was wasting a seat, and there were 3 women, and then they were saying, and we weren't the first one, 3 women among 10, and altogether among 80, we were total 10. So 1:8 ratio. So they used to say that, you are wasting the seats and so on. All of us have proved, first of all, we were the toppers, and they weren't, the men weren't, and because we studied hard. And then the second thing is that we showed, if one of us has passed away, but all 9, the rest 9 have shown to them that we can really be successful. We have worked. We didn't waste a seat, and probably a little more successful than those men. So we have shown that. So I understand what used to happen previously, and it has changed a lot in India and in many countries in that respect. So thank you so much for sharing. I have a question for Sushma, and I have a question for Marlene, but let me ask Sushma the question, and I'll read it. Do you think that women are not talking about their struggles during COVID because they feel the need to not complain or speak about their struggles? I mean, is it like they feel that they are not supposed to speak, that's why they're not complaining? Or what is your thought about that? Very interesting question, though.
Yeah. It may be both ways. It all depends on the personality type.
Yeah.
We see most of the women were having that dual function of looking after home and this work by sitting at home. So it is a fact. And of course, women have taken more burden during that period. A lot of women now say that how we did it, we really don't know in that period. But somehow we could manage it. You know, that's the way they say. So yes, it was tough time, I think, though maybe it was said or it was not said, but we can feel that it was a tough time for women, especially.
Yeah. I think a lot of time the women don't speak up a lot of time. I mean, they kind of take it for granted that this is the way it has been, so I'll take care of this. I mean, if my husband has used 10 pots and pans to cook one dish, I have kind of taken it for granted that's the way he is, and I'll wash those instead of complaining. I've learned that to keep, harmony at home. And I would rather have that and go and listen to music than complain. But I have a question for Marlene now, and this is related to that.
Add something.
Yeah, sure, Sushma.
what I saw myself, my husband had changed during that period. He used to work intensives. He used to do a lot of household work, to help me attend meetings and, to take care of small baby which had come in.
Yeah,
So it's very helpful. So pandemic had changed him a lot. He learned cooking
that's
also. He learned cooking. He used to cook a lot of things. So
wonderful
yeah,
positive effect of COVID-19. Now let's
yes.
look at, thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. Let's ask Marlene a question, and this is also, we are asking about if there has been a positive effect. Uh, in what ways are leaders rethinking their approach to support inclusivity and foster female talent during this time of pandemic?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I think this is a very important question for leaders across all organizations, but particularly, I think, STEM organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we have a very small proportion of women as leaders in STEM. The higher proportion is men. So really bringing that awareness to that leadership is quite important, because change is really driven from the top. Uh, but really, the leaders need to rethink the whole work system. For example, addressing the fact that the hours of work, how performance is appraised, a systematic approach which may need to be re-evaluated, looking at outcomes rather than time spent in the office, because as you
Oh,
said,
lovely.
we're looking at hybrids. Um, other measures like removing the gender bias, for example, in terms of, if any, creep in terms of opportunities for training, for performance appraisals, for pay. The gender pay gap still persists around the world. I think it has not been eliminated in a single country in the world, and in Australia it persists at around 16%. That is, women earn 16% less than men doing exactly the same job and with the
Mm-hmm.
same qualifications. And this occurs all around the world. So I think Iceland is the only country that has legislated against it, but I don't think they've achieved it yet. They're getting close, but haven't achieved it. And I think that it's important also to strengthen support for employees, especially those, and women are more affected, as we've already heard, when they're juggling their work and home life, because that is now merging when you're working
Mm-hmm.
from home, and it's far more difficult. And I think being more sensitive to those pressures is very important, and also ensuring well-being. So women feeling more anxious, more pressurized, and not speaking up. Even when they are under pressure, they don't speak up. They just carry that burden. And I don't agree that it's all rosy. I think that women just carrying on, and they might suffer in other ways in terms of their health and so on. So these are real issues that leaders need to address, and to be aware that these factors do exist, and that they need to make changes, with HR and so on. I think the most significant issue that leaders need to be aware of is the loss of women in leadership,
Yeah.
because uh, women progressing up what they call the broken rung, progressing up is going to have slowed during COVID, and many women in leadership positions may leave in larger numbers because they're
Right.
unable to balance the work and home life. I mean, some of us might be resilient and lucky enough to be in jobs where we can do it, but others cannot. And the loss of women in leadership has a flow on effect through the
Mm-hmm.
entire organization, because women have that lens. They can see differently from what men can see. They can see what changes need to be made. And if they're in a leadership position, they can make those changes. And I know I sit on boards of directors of very large STEM organizations in Australia, and I have worked to bring in close, for example, the gender gap, which persists. But we keep on pushing and raising that profile on gender pay gap, and also, you know, looking at other issues in the workplace, or making the workplace secure and safe for women, and so on. But you really need more women leaders, and if we lose women leaders, we will go back in ways that will be very hard to recover for a very long time.
Thank you so much. And some of the things that you said, um, I'll be honest, our HR has always talked about it in answers that this is a different situation. Our CEO himself, he is originally from India, Ajay Gopal, and Dr. Gopal said the very first video call to all of us, he said that this is an unusual time. We have to be cognizant of that, and we may have a child crying. We may have to take care of our parents at the same time. The dog might bark too, and that's the sound issues, and it has to be more flexible. And the thoughts that you said, that human resources in every organization should look at both for men and women, but for women, because we don't speak up, we kind of take it for granted that we'll take care of these things. It is more worrisome that we might not be able to do the exact same way that we were doing before. And as a result of that, if we lose people, especially in leadership positions, as lose women leaders, that's very that's kind of disappointing and disturbing, rather, because that is not going to help us achieve the SDGs well, I would say. I have actually a question for Mihoko. It's my question. I was listening to all these great panelists, esteemed colleagues, and I was thinking that, have you seen, and it has some ties with one of the questions that has been asked, that you are seeing that even in Asia Pacific, you are seeing different perspectives. I mean, what has been done in Malaysia and India may not be the same situation in Japan, may not be the same situation in Australia. And you being in United Nations and working with your colleagues all over the world, what do you think? Has culture played a role in dealing with women in especially women in STEM during this pandemic? How the women were treated, how the women behaved means that, I mean, attended the meetings, or there have been loss in women leaders in different cultures in different ways. Have you seen or heard anything about that?
Thank you so much, Soma, and thank you so much, everyone. You know, like I have been listening to what everyone said, and you know, it was quite fascinating and interesting to compare differences and also similarities between India, Australia, Malaysia, and Japan. Right. So, but when coming back to your question, Soma, cultural differences, this is again my personal opinion, but I definitely think there is, you know, this dimension of cultural differences, but that is not the only perspective, only element affecting, you know, this entire situation. There is the culture is one, gender difference is another, and also personality difference is also another dimension. So when we look at this situation, there are so many elements at play. So you know, again, the bottom line is cultural difference. Definitely, I think it's influencing, but that is not the only aspect.
Okay. Okay. So another question to you, and this has come from one of our colleagues who is attending. This is also to you, Mihoko, that what would you say to young women who are entering the STEM field today to protect them from the same struggles that women trailblazers had already faced in part. And this is, though the question is to Mihoko, I think this is the question I want to ask everyone before we end. So how do we prepare the young women entering the STEM field with the knowledge that they will be prepared to face the challenges, I would say, giving them our stories. Do you think, and the question is, do you think women stifle their growth by overthinking and fearing their own potential? So together this, I mean, my question is, how do you think that we as women engineering leaders and leaders in the STEM field and being women, how can we prepare these young women who are entering the STEM fields?
Thank you so much, Soma. I'll try to be brief because I'm really keen to listen from other leaders. So I think it is a very, very important point. I think this is one of the core questions in this session. How can we help nurture future female leaders in STEM and also in various sectors around the world? I think to me, there are basically 3 levels. Number one is individual level. So young, girls themselves really, I strongly believe that they should or they should be given opportunities to believe and also see firsthand that it doesn't really, gender difference doesn't really matter if they have strong will and they if they make efforts, they will be able to pursue their dreams. So individual level efforts and also support coming from different directions, families, schools, etc., etc. Simultaneously, support system, so it's more organizational level system. There should be this overall environment to support girls and women to be able to play an important role in STEM and also other fields. So this overall environment is a critical element. And lastly, the role of leadership. I think this is absolutely critical. So as female leaders, everyone present here in this session, and I'm sure many audience are female leaders in different sectors as well. So we are role model. We are, our responsibility is to help those young girls and also boys as well, so that they don't, their pathway will be smoother than our generation. So providing coaching and mentoring, I think there are many ways as well. So that is really truly our responsibility for the future generation. So let me stop here. Thank you. Back to you, Soma.
Thank you so much, Mihoko. I think I will go to Khairiyah because she had told us about how they had adjusted to situations during this time. And I know her also from many acquaintances on LinkedIn, and look at her literature, how she has supported the young women engineers or young women who are entering the STEM field. So can you share with us, especially during pandemic, how can the women leaders, engineering leaders can support the women, engineering or STEM field leaders can support the young women in who are just entering the STEM field?
Well, we are very fortunate because there's been a lot of research bringing what actually matters. So I really promote among engineering academics to do this in a scholarly manner rather than just by intuition, because sometimes we are not really targeting what really matters. So there's a lot of research that shows that we have to create social presence for our students, not just the women, but also the men, so that they feel acknowledged. Even, even in a physical class, social presence is very important, but it is even more so in a virtual situation, because you can just be this, behind the screen, you don't know who's there. And we have to create the virtual environment in such a way that everybody feels acknowledged. And I think it's very important for girls, for us to acknowledge them, even to just say out their names, and to really, appreciate their presence. And this is another thing about going back to the principles, how we interact, making sure that there's an interactive environment will have a very big impact. And this is supported by research in a lot of ways, which is why I've been posting on my LinkedIn, just simple tools so that we can have interactions among us. And, by just simple interaction, the young ladies know that we acknowledge them. We would like to listen to what they're thinking. And through, the simple acknowledgements, they begin to open up, and they will, there's a lot of help available, but as you said, women like to keep quiet. But yes, so we need to be aware of what is happening. We need to, I'm not as technology savvy as the younger faculty members, but I learn from them all the time. And learning from each other, like we are the older ones, the leaders, we're supposed to mentor the younger ones, but it can also go the other way, where we learn from each other. Yes, so I think by acknowledging the expertise of the young ladies that we are with, the young men that we're with, acknowledging that they have that potential and wanting to learn from them, it also shows their self-worth, like we appreciate them. And for our students who are just going into the STEM areas, we need to acknowledge them as a person, even though we do not see them in front of us. We cannot give them a pat on the back because we are not physically present, but just by saying out their names when they come into that virtual room, it means a lot. It means a lot. So yeah, creating that social presence, being sincere in interacting with them, having an interactive environment, I think it really makes a difference. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your thoughts about listening to and just saying their names. That makes a difference. I'll quickly go to Sushma to know her thoughts. We don't have much time left, so in a minute or so, can you tell your thoughts that how, as women leaders, we can support young women entering the STEM field, and especially during this pandemic?
Yeah, I'll share a story of our own faculty, young faculty, lady faculty. So she was doing her PhD research work, which was on nanoparticles, coating and all those things. And when this pandemic broke out, she thought, why not apply it to the mask which people wear? And then when she did the testing and trials, she could make a nanoplasmic coating to the cloth, and she made a VFAB mask, a nanoparticle coated mask. And she applied that research. She had that research work which she was doing. It was at home also. One setup was there. And when she developed it, first thing she called me up that it is very successful. And when I have done the tests, it is showing that almost 99% pathogens are killed.
Wow.
And then she shared with me that when she had to go to the labs, it was so difficult. It was all male dominated. She had to go to the villages to collect data. But she said during the pandemic also, she could, like, some energy within her came in and she could face those challenges, got all the tests done. And then when she was talking to me, I told her, why don't you do technology transfer now? If you feel it has very good breathability, those masks, all the women thing was put into it. When she made the mask, the elastics which are there, I use her mask all the time, because the elastic is made with adjustment, and it is so reliable, and it is a 3-layer mask. The central layer has the nanoplasmic coating. So I said, why don't you do the technology transfer? She said, no. I'm not here to earn money. I will do manufacturing on my own. So
Okay.
she started a small startup. Of course, her husband was with her. Husband also helped her, but it was her idea. Then she identified the cloth merchant, from where to get the cloth, from where to get those particles. And then the greatest thing is that she employed the rural women, because she saw that the laborers have lost their job.
Yeah.
So the women have to manage the home, they have to cook the food, so it's a problem for them. So she employed 15 rural women to do the stitching work. She trained them, and she sold more than, I think, 10,000 plus masks in this pandemic. And it's a beautiful product she has made. If you use the N95 mask, when I use it, suffocating. But when I use her mask, it has excellent breathability and excellent protection. You can use it 20 times after washing. A lot of economic aspects also have been brought in. So that's the story I wanted to share. So the recognition, opportunity to create awareness, young women can also do wonders.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sushma. Asking Marlene about what do you think? I mean, listening to Sushma's stories, and how can we, in fact, support these young women entering STEM, especially during pandemic, and what the wonderful story she shared. You're mute.
Yeah, I just very quickly want to say both Sushma and Khairiyah have given unique examples, but they really relate to the changing the system. I think if we want permanent change to take place, to not just attract women to STEM, but to retain them and enable them to progress, we've got to change the system. And what we have is a very leaky pipeline. We have women who come into STEM and then leave because the work environment is too difficult, or they can't balance work and life, and so on. And by changing the system to create an environment that is supportive and encouraging at every stage of their career, not just at the entry level, that's how we will have women progressing to leadership, including mentoring and support. And this, in essence, is it's a task for leaders, male and female, to undertake, to look at the system and where change needs to be made, and to plug those holes in the leaky pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't want to miss Minako's thoughts in this important topic. So in a minute, can you please let us know your thoughts? How can we support this young women entering STEM field, especially during this pandemic?
Right. My comment is not specific to the during pandemic, but I would just want to encourage the young women in coming into STEM, because I think the situations of the women in Japan is getting better and better. So don't be afraid. And I would just like to say that be confident about their capability, and just speak out that we really want to play active part in this field. So that is my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to extend my deepest sense of thanks to every one of you for, first of all, joining this session, sharing your thoughts, and answering all the questions very, very patiently. And I don't know what time is everywhere, because I think Marilyn, it's quite late at night. I'm sure it's probably close to midnight or so, and so is in Japan, I think. So Malaysia, everywhere it is getting late. So thank you very much. And I'm sure what people have learned from you, from your wisdom, your experience, your thoughts, your recommendations, they will carry it with them. Thank you. And
Thank
we
you.
will end at this time, but we will rejoin for the Europe and the Americas session at 2 o'clock GMT. So now you convert your times. Use the same link that you have used for entering this session and the opening ceremony. It's the same link working the entire time today. So please join us again to learn how is the Europe and the Americas doing, how are they doing during this pandemic with respect to women in STEM. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Very nice to see all of you.
Soma.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.